Hello and welcome to Hope Instead of Nope, fighting for quality of life in the face of Parkinson's. This is episode 4. It's all about resilience. My guest today is Gregor.
Hi, I'm back. Can't get rid of me if you wanted to.
So today, since we're talking about resilience, I wanted to mention that in previous episodes we touched briefly on some hard times that you've been through. Of course, there are many, many more things we could talk about in that department, but instead of dwelling on the negative, let's talk about resilience and why you keep on fighting for your quality of life.
Part of it is the scientific world gives me hope, because I have to be honest that I have had the DBS brain surgery and things like that. And part of it is my faith that gives me hope. Kind of like a mixture of the two, I'd say.
A lot of people, when they get their diagnosis, get really depressed, give up, and basically just make things really, really hard for themselves. What was it that you did in the beginning that helped you kind of break free from that?
I realized what the disease was and I accepted it for what it is. I also looked into people like Clinton Tipton, the guitarist from Judas Priest. He had Parkinson's. He still played for years. Michael J. Fox, you'd argue he became more successful after his diagnosis. And so I realized that, yes, it's a terrible disease, but it doesn't mean life is over.
Right. And I was there in the early days. This was not an instant process. I know this took time and everything. I'm going to also add something that I think is a strategy that I've seen you use over and over again, which is you have your routine and you say, today I'm going to do this, and you stick with it. A long time ago, a friend of mine asked, how do you just keep going every day? Because a lot of what was going on at that time was completely negative, and I had told him that we find a little bit of joy in every day. And sometimes, at that time, I think there were things that we were doing that were probably not the healthiest choices, but they kept us going. And now the little joys that we find every day are things that make us healthier and stronger and more resilient, actually.
Yeah, you can't judge the past. I'm not going to sit down and go, you shouldn't have had that milkshake, because at that time that milkshake would probably save your life.
In that sense, because that was the joy that we had to have at that time, but that was a Band-Aid, a short-term thing that we couldn't keep doing forever.
True.
So thinking about resilience in the context of having Parkinson's and fighting every day for your quality of life, what is it that keeps you going every day?
I think there's a lot of it to do with my religious faith from God. You look at what happened to Job in the Bible, and he had a really tough lot for no reason other than God and the devil placing bets on him. So that's one thing it does. And my friends and family help me also. And being productive in my life does. Because one of the worst things that happens to people, whether they have Parkinson's or not, is they just start to feel useless because they're not doing anything. So I keep myself useful in society and with my family. And
going back to the story of Job,
what happens is that it starts off in heaven. The devil goes to God and says, hey, make a wager against Job. Job will give up everything in Christ's name if you take these things from him. And God says, let's find out. And so then what happens is God and the devil get in a dialogue, a repetitive one about like, what about if you take away Job's wives? What if you take away all his land? What if you take away all of Job's sheep? And then every single time, Job does not refuse to reject God. And that's I find that to be kind of resilient and face it. If you can bounce back from losing everything, what can't you bounce back from?
Okay. And that resonates with you?
Yes, it does.
And compare that to the experience of having Parkinson's, please.
Part of the curses that God puts upon Job are physical. And for me, part of the Parkinson's is physical. Sometimes it's just difficult to move. And it's the same thing with Job. It wasn't just that he lost his sheep. There was boils, I believe, on his skin and things like that, which are physical attributes. And he looked,
And you found ways to just keep bouncing back. And I know this from the beginning of your experiences, this wasn't an instant process. It's not like you said, oh, I have Parkinson's and now I'm just going to keep fighting. You had to like really come to terms with the fact that you have Parkinson's, and you were really down at first.
Correct. I denied it for a long time, and I had to come up with ways to like feel accomplished. I mean, legitimately feel accomplished by making tasks done. By doing dishes and laundry and things like that. Sounds weird, but it really feels good to be part of a family where you actually can like do stuff to help, rather than just sit in a wheelchair. Because I remember like when my grandmother, excuse me, was elderly. She's basically sat in a wheelchair for the last couple of years of her life, and she didn't do anything at all.
Right, and you've always had your to-do list, and you've said to me many times that crossing off things on your to-do list gives you a dopamine hit or a happiness feeling.
Yeah.
And that's something you can do for yourself daily. And then you also challenge yourself in things that I think other people feel are just regular everyday tasks. Maybe they take them for granted as being easy, but they're not easy for you.
No, talking to strangers is not easy. So every day I go to the grocery store and make myself talk to an employee there. Things like that, it's becomes very difficult. The normal things that people can do, like saying hello, becomes very difficult sometimes.
Right, and there are certain things that you do in person intentionally in order to challenge yourself, like banking. You could do online, but it's actually good for you to be able to talk to people you don't know.
Correct. I go to the bank by myself, and that's the thing. It's other things I do. I need to do them alone, because I do them all with you or with my girlfriends or my wives. Then you become a clutch.
A crutch.
Yeah, a crutch. And I find that sometimes people do things for me sometimes I ask people to do things for me because I need it to be done. No, need, not want. And sometimes I have people with me and they want to help me. And God bless them, but they're not doing it for the right reasons, because they need to challenge me so I can challenge myself.
Right, and they don't know all the nuances of your situation and everything like that. Let's dedicate this episode to the gentleman who was on the trail with us today when we were hiking.
Okay. We were hiking on a trail today, and this very nice gentleman came up. And you can tell that I walked different, and obviously I had some medical issues. He offered to go pick up his truck and drive us back to the parking lot. And it was very kind of him, so thank you, whoever you were. See, random acts of kindness.
Yeah, to strangers.
Yeah, to strangers.
One of the points that I wanted to mention about resilience is it's important to be really, really persistent, because there are going to be times when you feel like giving up. There are going to be long stretches of negative things, and then if you keep trying strategies or keep focusing on what makes you happy or what gives you that natural dopamine that you need daily, then you can actually improve your life gradually. Was there anything you wanted to say about that?
No, you summed it up very well.
Thanks. And thanks for listening to our podcast today. Remember to keep fighting for a better quality of life, and that you are never alone.
And just be kind to someone today.